Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of kick-butt heroines in dark fantasy worlds, and I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking from small town to dark romance, and an Amazon best-selling top 15 author for known books such as Hooked and Beneath the Stars. We are talking to the one and only Emily McIntire. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to have you on. And you were just explaining to me, we can't see here, but you've got a lot of books happening and you've got another 700 paperbacks to the side that you've been signing all day. So I'm surprised you're still alive. Have you been living off coffee today or
No, I actually am limiting myself to one cup of coffee because if I let myself go crazy with it, then I just throw my entire body out of whack. I'll just guzzle it all day long. But no, I've just been, chugging along.
take me back to the start then? What got you into this crazy world of being an author? When did you write your first book and how did you find publishing it?
I have been a published author for almost exactly 2 years. I released my first book, Beneath the Stars, the first week of September. 2 years ago. So yeah. And I've been a writer my entire life. I've been writing, I have hundreds of notebooks just filled with stuff from the time I could write. But I wrote song lyrics and poems, and I was more of a reader than a writer of novels, a voracious reader my whole life. And then I started to think, maybe I was 18, 19 that I'd really like to write a novel, but I never told anybody. This is kind of a wild story. I had never told anybody that I was thinking about writing a novel because I was a musician and everybody just kept pushing for me to write music and write songs. But I just kept it in the back of my head because I would read, 5, 10 books a week. Um, and then when I was a few years ago, I would say probably about 4 years ago now, maybe three and a half, my mom bought me a psychic reading with her psychic, and it was done over Skype. And he doesn't know anything about you. He goes in totally blind, just knows your first name. And he said in the middle of it, he was already like really accurate on things, but then in the middle of it, he said, "Who is it that's thinking about writing a book?" And I still had never told anybody, not even my husband knew. And I was like, "Well, I have." He's like, "Yeah, he called it spirit." He said, "Spirit is really, really pushing for that to happen and saying you really need to write a book." So I was like, okay, but I didn't do it. And then about 6 months later, my husband had a reading. And again, he didn't know he was my husband, didn't know anything about him. And in the middle of his reading, he said, "Who is close to you that's gifted with the written word? Because I just keep hearing to be published. And they really want me to tell you that whoever it is, you really need to push them into publishing. It's what they're supposed to do." So when that happened, I was like, okay, I will just, I guess I'll do it. And I sat down and I had no clue what I was doing. And I just started writing, and Beneath the Stars was born. And I wrote it in a couple months, and I started researching everything about self-publishing and never looked back.
Wow. And I love that story. First of all, that is so magical. And you have to give me that guy's details because I love psychic reading. So I've got,
Yeah. Okay.
but that is such an amazing whirlwind. How did you find after you hit publish, had you then told your husband and family that you were writing a book? And when did you start noticing the snowball effect?
Yeah. So as soon as my husband told me about the reading, and after I had told my husband and my mother and my stepfather about my reading, so they knew then. Like I had been thinking about this, but I hadn't told anybody. And my husband knew then. And so they all knew that I was writing the book. They were very supportive. I also had a brand new infant at home. I was a stay-at-home mom with an infant during this time, so I used to write standing up at my kitchen counter while she would be like bouncing in her bouncer or sleeping, taking naps, or I'd be nursing her and trying to write. So yeah, they all knew. They were very, very, very supportive. And I don't know, it kind of always in a way, it always felt like once I made the decision to do it, I kind of always felt like this is what I meant to do. So I almost expected there to be a snowball effect. I don't know if I expected it to the level that it's gotten to so quickly, but I've always been a person that when I put my mind to something, I'm like, okay, if I do this, I'm going to do it and be the best that I can possibly be at it. So, uh, some people may call that a perfectionist, but that's what I did. So I kind of knew that I believed in myself enough to think that would happen. And it happened pretty quickly. My debut novel released, I think in the top 2000 on Amazon, which um, on its release day, which was huge for me. I was not expecting that. And then it just kind of built from there. And then once I got on TikTok, a viral video sent Beneath the Stars into the top 18 on Amazon, and then my books just stayed really, and then popularity gained. And once Hooked came out, that was the game changer. And that series took off, and it's just been kind of over, I don't want to say overwhelming because I love it, but just mind-blowing.
Yeah, there are so many things I want to talk about. So we're going to touch on a lot of those things you just mentioned, such
Okay.
as TikTok as well. But let's talk a little bit about Hooked, because even when you were saying before that you used to write music, I can see that even in your blurb a little bit, because it's very sort of lyrical you're writing, and it's very poetic the way that the Hooked blurb was written. That now has over 19,000 ratings and reviews on Amazon, which is phenomenal. So can you tell us, for those who haven't yet read it and they need to get onto that now, what is it about?
So the Never After series is a collection of standalones, where I take our classic fairy tales and I fracture them, break them apart, take out the fantasy world, and twist them into dark, romantic, contemporary stories where villains get their happily ever afters. So I take the villains, the inspiration, and then I give them brand new stories. They're not retellings in the sense that they're retelling the same story arc as the original, but they are fractured fairy tales where I take the inspiration, I give nods to the original sources, and I create this new universe. Hooked in particular is inspired by Peter Pan, but the villain in mine is James Hook Barry, and the female main character is an adult, Wendy. But I twist up the characters, I give them new personalities, and my villains don't get redemption. They never become heroes. It's more a series about, learning to love your flaws and allowing other people to love your flaws too, because even villains can feel, and everybody deserves love.
What advice would you have for other writers who are here? What advice would you offer them to write spellbinding romances? What are the things that you have stuck with that you feel like's not necessarily the perfect formula for you, but has created that magical chemistry in your books?
I don't think that there's a one size fits all way of writing. And when I first started writing, I was told frequently that there was. So my biggest advice to writers, especially new writers who may be researching a lot on the craft or how to do things, is to take all the advice and try it out, but don't get so stuck in the box of what people think you should be writing like that it stifles your creativity. Because at the end of the day, writing is art, and it's expressive and it's vulnerable. And however that works for you is how you need to do it. So it comes through that way. For me, I edit as I go, because if I don't, I get complete writer's block and I cannot write the story. And I had so many people tell me that I would never finish a book doing it that way. And if I had listened to that, then I wouldn't have, be on my ninth book that's about to be finished. So I just think, don't overthink your craft to the point where it stifles the art. Perfection is the death of creativity.
And I think it's such a learning experience, especially for new authors, to figure out what your process is like, what works for you. And then it comes in time after a couple of books, I feel, is when you start trusting that and trusting your intuitive guidance through books as well. Are you a plotter or a pantser? What does your writing style actually look like?
I absolutely agree with you that it takes a few books. I'm a pantser. I do not plot my stories, which is funny because I honestly, it's kind of eerie how my plots come together, and I'll see that earlier in the stories, I have placed Easter eggs for the plot twist without realizing that that's what I was doing because I didn't know what the plot twist was going to be until I got there. I've tried to plot out my books, but it doesn't work for me. So when I write in first person dual point of view. I write from both perspectives. And I write that way because it's truly the characters are in my head talking to me, showing me the scenes like a movie, and I'm putting it on the page. So I really have no control. I'm telling their stories and I'm crafting it in my words, but I it's their stories. If I try to pre-plot, they change it all up on me anyway.
What does your 9 till 5 look like, so to speak? Because writing is a very disciplined art form. We need to, and especially when you're then running a business, it's not just the writing, it's marketing, it's signing the paperbacks. And you have a 3.5-year-old daughter as well. So you have a lot happening at the moment. First of all, do you sleep? And what does your 9 till 5 look like?
I do sleep except when I'm on a deadline, and then I don't sleep. But I try to wake up in the morning before my daughter. Luckily, my daughter likes to sleep in. So she normally wakes up around 9:30, 10, and she's really good about playing. She likes to play, wake herself up and play in her room for about 20, 30 minutes before she comes out. So if I can wake myself up in the morning, I have a cup of coffee on my patio, then I come upstairs and I write the best in the morning before my brain gets all fuzzy from the day. So I try to get my writing goals in the morning. I sprint write. So I write for 5 minutes on, take 5 minutes off, 5 minutes on, and then I go back after a chapter's done and I clean it up. And I do that for a couple hours. Luckily, my husband has been able, he's an engineer, but he was able to quit his job and work with me full time. Uh, so he's home with our daughter too, which allows me when I need to be in my office and write. Usually take a break for lunch, come back in for a couple more hours. And my goal is to take evenings off to be with my daughter. And then if I'm not on a deadline, I really only write for maybe an hour or two in the morning, get a couple thousand words in, and then the rest of the day I'm either doing marketing or, spending it with my family and trying to enjoy the time off before I have to write, cram write at the end.
I feel like a lot of us do that. We're like
Yeah.
steady pace, panic button, panic button.
I think it's part of the writer process.
Yeah.
You have to feel the pressure of the deadline.
Yeah, it may add a few more gray hairs, but that's okay. We
Yeah,
love it.
that's
We love the
fine.
pressure. I really want to get into TikTok then. TikTok is such an interesting platform at the moment. I remember about a year ago, I was like, oh, TikTok, no way. And now, fully for it. For the obvious reasons of obviously books going viral, you do extremely well on TikTok. You have over 42,000 followers, which is amazing. So, do you have any advice for authors who are getting on TikTok and just can't grasp it properly or don't know what they're doing right or doing wrong? What advice do you have?
Well, I was like you actually, where I resisted getting TikTok for a really long time. And then something just kept telling me that I needed to. So when I did, I think the most important thing is TikTok is great because it's actually, in my opinion, the one social media that appreciates imperfection, and they don't want you to look perfect on video. They want you to be real and be funny or be serious. They just want realness. So my advice is to figure out what your personal brand is, and that's beyond the books you sell. That's you as the author. What is your personal brand? Who you represent to your readers? And really figure that out. And then just be yourself and highlight those parts of your brand on that platform. some people don't show their face on video, and you don't have to. Lauren Asher is a great example of an author who doesn't show her face and has incredible success. That's my number one advice, is to just be real and to not try to fit yourself in a little box or do exactly what other people are doing. Experiment, try different things, and again, don't overthink it, because honestly, my videos that do the best on TikTok are the ones that I make in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, it's really random which ones take off and which ones don't. So post so you enjoy it, and don't get too caught up in going viral, because I think when you do that, people can see that you're not enjoying what you post. And I think that's really important in TikTok, especially when you're trying to subtly sell a product like your book.
I think too, it comes down to, and I'd love to get into the discussion of branding actually, because yours are very much on point across all your social medias, on your website, your book covers as well. It's an Emily book. And one thing that I've noticed too is that a lot of people try, especially when they first get into it, they try to be on all the social medias. And who knows, if TikTok is not necessarily for you, it doesn't have to be. Same with Instagram or Facebook. Find what lane you most prefer. Some authors don't like being on social media at all, and that's okay as well. So, when it comes to brand, what advice do you have? Because I think a lot of authors struggle to really find their identity and their voice in the shape of their brand, because when you first start publishing, it's not necessarily the first thing you think of until you need a bit of a uniform for all the books that you then publish afterwards. So what advice do you have?
Well, I think when it comes to branding, there's a huge thing that happens a lot of times where you start to think of, how do I brand my books? How do I brand this? When really the first thing you need to figure out again is your personal branding, because your personal branding is going to be on everything. And I don't mean your logo, I don't mean your tagline, although that's important too. I mean who you're going to present to the world as, your author, Emily McIntire. Who are you? So, and this was actually, I heard, I think Candy Steiner was the one who put it in a really good way. She said, find the pillars of your personality and then list out 4 different pillars of personality that you have that don't have to do with your writing, and make those the things you bring forward in your personal brand to connect with the reader.
Yeah.
And then once you have that, then you can start thinking about what you want your books to be branded like, that represent you. And you don't have to box yourself in. Like I write small town, one series is a small town romance series, and then another series is a dark romance, yet there's still a general kind of artistic quality to my books and to the covers and to the branding on the back and the swag that goes with them that I use for everything. And I think it's just really, you have to figure out what you're going to represent authentically, because when you focus too much on what you think other people want you to be, it's going to start getting muddled and hard to figure out.
And people very much do love a genuine person, to know who you are, as you were saying. You've actually piqued my interest on something. You mentioned swag. This is
Mm-hmm.
a tricky one for a lot of authors. What advice would you offer authors who are watching? Because I think a lot of people can often get overwhelmed with it. And also some blow way over their budget in creating swag, because I think it's essential. So if somebody is starting off, what would you recommend for them?
Well, if you don't have money to invest, I would not worry about the swag at all at first, to be completely honest, because I think when you're running a business, which this is, especially if you're self-publishing, it is a business, but regardless, you have to budget. So you have to invest back in your business what you're making. And if you don't have anything that you're making yet, I think focusing on getting money rolling in the business is the most important. After that, I would start small. Stickers are always a great way to do things. And again, this would take a little bit of an investment, but once you get the first couple $100 that you can invest back into your business, I would recommend buying a sticker machine so you do them yourself, which is what we do. We have all of the stuff to make our own swag here. We have the heat press, we can make mugs, we can make shirts, we can make all our stickers, we make ourselves. And it's an investment up front, but it saves so much money in the long term and allows you to create kind of that bigger swag um, inventory that you wouldn't be able to get. But again, like swag, people are buying the books because they want the book. So if you can't afford to do swag, I recommend not worrying about it. That's an extra thing that comes just from you building your reader base.
And I think too, a lot of people get very excited, but I know I was bad for it when I first. I was like, I want all the things. I love them. What would you say your personal favorite swag item is? Do you have a favorite?
I love stickers because I love stickers because you could get really creative with them. As a reader, I don't know if I have a favorite of what I get from other authors. I'm a sucker for special edition covers. So again, the books themselves are what I care about. Uh, my personal favorite swag that I give is probably a note that I put in with all of my Scarred books from the male main character. So it's like a note that he writes in the book and they get a copy of it themselves when they order a signed book.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to talk about you hitting top 15 on the Amazon bestselling list because that is an amazing accomplishment. And I would love to hear about the moment you found out you were on that list, but also, most importantly, how you celebrated.
Well, like I said, so Beneath the Stars hit top 18. And when that happened, I cried because that was very unexpected. And that was from a viral TikTok. So it was really an incredible moment in my career, but it wasn't quite the same feeling as when you hit the list just because you release a book and it hits the list. So the first book to do that was Hooked. And it wasn't actually release day that happened. Hooked did not break into the top 100 on release day. It got close, but it didn't break. And I think looking back, it was probably because it was my first dark romance and people just didn't know if I could make, write versatile like that. So it was a week after release and it broke into the top 100 and then it just kept going up and kept going up. And it didn't hit top 15, I don't think, but Hooked stayed in the top 100 on Amazon for 10 months. And then it has never dropped out of the top 100s to this day. Its 1 year anniversary will be September 7th, I think, is when it released. Don't quote me on that. And when I looked earlier today, I think it was at like 101. So it's been the most steady, closest to that list. Then when Scarred released on release day, Scarred hit number 15 on release day. And not just in the US, it hit the top lists in, Canada, Italy, everywhere, the UK. So that was a big moment for me because that was the first book that on release day, it got so high on the list just because people wanted to read it. So I cried. My husband got champagne, and it's kind of hard to soak it in the moment. So it's just kind of a thing you have to reflect on. And then when Wretched released, it hit 13 on release day. So we just did it all over again.
That's amazing. And congratulations. Did you cry on
Thank
the
you.
13 as well? Do you cry every
Yeah,
time?
I always cry. I always cry. So it's just, there's a lot to be grateful for that happens, that people just continually want to read your words and that, they are reading them. It's kind of just a surreal experience for it to happen.
What would you say then the most surprising thing is that you found in the publishing industry that you weren't expecting when you went on this journey?
That's a great question. I would say in self-publishing, the amount of people, you have to be careful who you work with and the contracts you sign. I think what was surprising to me is that people that you would assume would be extremely professional, their companies, they might not, they don't have your best interest at heart. And that's not to say they're out to get you, but they're all going to protect their bottom line. And so when your books start to get a little bit of steam behind them, you'll have a lot of people coming out of the woodworks wanting to get a piece of the pie and get contracts that don't necessarily work in your favor. And that was something that I was thankful that I knew a little bit about that and I had a legal team in place that I could ask questions, but it still caught me off guard with just how much people will try to kind of take your intellectual property and own it all themselves.
Sounds like when you went into this, though, you had a very business mind around it. As you said, you had a legal team in place. You kind of went into it kind of fully expecting what you need to do as a business, which is fantastic because I know a lot of people. I'm going to refer to myself here. I was quite young when I published my first one. So I hit publish and I was like, cool, now what? And then it was through my growth and development that I realized I need to shape this into a business. So that sounds amazing that you already had those pillars there for you. What would you say then has been your greatest success so far and your greatest obstacle?
I would say my greatest success is getting the Never After series signed to a book deal. That was huge for me. And being able to do it in a way where I held I don't want to say the power, but because I had built my own success, I was able to negotiate a deal where, like, for example, I keep the ebook rights. So they don't get any of the ebooks. They're just doing print, but it's a traditionally published, it's publisher and a big one. So I get that backing and I get that deep distribution. That was always my goal, was to get a book deal and to kind of take my career to that next level. So that was a big moment for me. My biggest obstacle is my imposter syndrome, which I don't think it ever goes away. And I feel like most people in most industries experience it, but that is something that you really have to have a strong sense of self and really believe in, that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're writing the stories you're supposed to be writing, because otherwise that imposter syndrome will come and kick your ass.
Hands down. Do you still find that you have it just as much as when you first started out, or do you know how to snuff the fire out a little bit more? You know, the conversations that you need to have with yourself to remind yourself that you're a badass.
I I would say that it tries to be there just as much, but I have learned how to overcome it and how to kind of kick it away as time goes on. It helps because I don't look at reviews anymore at all.
Okay.
And when I first started, I definitely looked at reviews, and it just, is not good for my mental health. So I, once I cut that off, and you have to write for yourself. And once just learn to remind myself, I'm writing for myself. I'm doing this because it's what I'm supposed to be doing. Not everybody's going to like it. I deserve to be in every space I walk into, kind of situation. It helps. But I don't think it ever really fully will go away for most people.
And I think you get to a good situation too, whereby 2 years in, you've probably found your tribe, you've probably found your fellow author friends. So when you're having a glum day, you can go and they'll be like, I'm just the worst author in the world. And they'll be like, enough of that. You know, this is your cycle and you have that support around you as well. I
Yes.
am curious as to whether there's any resources or Facebook groups or podcasts that you have listened to in the past or still listen to or read now that has helped you on your journey, whether it's writing or business or marketing. Were there any go-tos for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Facebook wise, 20 books to 50K is an incredible Facebook group that I have been in since the beginning. It's probably the Facebook group that I go to first if I ever have questions for anything. They're just an incredible group of people. I think there's like 50,000 members of writers in there. And it's just the resources there. You can find answers and support for almost everything. Alessandra Torre Inkers is another great Facebook group full of writers and support and resources. And then outside of that, there's Ally, which is Authors Independent Alliance. I'm probably confusing those words. And that is a membership cost to join that. But in my opinion, it's very worth it because you get access to podcasts and articles and writers, their legal team, tax resources, everything. And I haven't personally had to deal with this, but I hear that they have a pretty good connection with Amazon. So if you ever deal with things with Amazon, they can help you kind of navigate sticky situations. And then another one is the Authors Guild, which is another membership-based one. You do have to be a published author to join the Authors Guild, but I love them. Again, just incredible resources, constant articles, constant information. Also, when you join, they have a legal team that you can submit any contract, and their legal team will read it for you and send you a detailed email back listing out what they recommend you change, how to protect your interests, rewording certain things, and kind of help you navigate. I use them all the time. It's so worth it. So those are the main ones I go to.
Yeah, that sounds amazing too, because I know a lot of people can be intimidated when it comes to contracts and things. It may not be something a lot of us have necessarily dealt with. So that's an amazing resource to have and a good team to have
Oh
behind you.
yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
What would you say your top three must-dos are every time you have a release? What are the three things that you make sure are in place before it goes live?
Um, well, if you're talking about right before release,
Yeah,
then
probably that. Let's say like 3 months before. What's your,
okay.
yeah, let's say 3 months before.
Well, this is a little, it's a two-parter then, because before I did this most recent book that's coming out, Twisted, I was completely self-published. So 3 months was when I was really publishing about every 3 months. So I make sure that I have a cover reveal in place and that I've teased the cover reveal, built up hype to it so that it gets shared a lot. Pre-order in place for when that drops. Arcs. Oh, wait, I can only pick three. Shoot.
It's okay.
uh,
I will allow it. I'm kind of
okay.
yeah, so I will allow it.
Okay. Of course, have your arcs in place, and arcs go out. I send them out a week beforehand when I'm self-publishing. And then also just the teasers. So important that you're teasing the book and marketing it to build demand before you supply it. Because if you don't create the demand, there's not going to be any when you have the product to supply. Now with Twisted, the next book, it's a little different because the pre-orders, it releases in February and it's August. And I'm not used to that, but that's because it's traditionally published, so it takes longer. The pre-order is already up. The cover reveal is like this Sunday with BuzzFeed, so it's like I'm having to switch things up. So I don't know the top three things I'll do this time, but probably teasers, arcs, and building demand.
This is so exciting though that you get to go on a brand new adventure now having your publisher to figure out what's new, how where can you insert yourself here and what you can do. That's really exciting.
Yeah, it's fun.
Do you do a lot of like book signings and events?
I don't do a lot. I haven't done any. My first book signing will be this October in Vegas for the Love in Vegas at Planet Hollywood. And then I'm going to Book Bonanza next year. I'll be one of the signing authors there. I'm sure when it gets closer to Twisted release, my publicist will have me around different like Barnes and Nobles and indie bookshops to do some events, but I don't like to travel very much. And I don't like to be away from my daughter. that much either. So I tend to pick and choose ones, a couple for a year and not do any more than that.
Yeah, that's fair. What would you then say? Because obviously readers are who make the dream come alive for us. What would you say your most memorable reader interaction moment has been?
Oh, that's such a hard one. I would say, I get fan mail sometimes, and the people who message me and say that my book got them back into reading, or that something really resonated with them and it changed their life, is that always makes me extremely emotional. But having people tattoo my words on their body, That has to take the cake for me. And the first time somebody showed me a tattoo, I got a random message, and I just happened to see it in my request of words from Hooked tattooed. I think their mother actually got it in honor of them. I cried. Oh, I cried. So tattoos probably are going to be my answer so far because that's like a huge thing, I feel like.
That's massive. You must cry
Yeah.
into your champagne a lot.
Oh my gosh. I'm a crier too. I'll cry at Hallmark commercials.
Oh my goodness, I'm crying in laughter. Wow.
Yeah, see,
Um,
I'm wearing off on you. That's what it is.
I'm gonna be after this, like, oh my goodness. The feels. Well, speaking then of feels and crying, I want to talk about a little bit of a tricky one, which is content warnings. So, this has been a long debate for a while with authors. Some people choose to put it on their blurbs. Some people do not. I've noticed you actually have it on your website, and for each book that may have certain disclaimers for them. So, what was the conversation that you had with yourself to make the decision to put them on there?
I personally like to go in blind when I read things. And as an author, I prefer for people to read my art blind because I just think that that's the best way. However, I don't want to cause anybody triggers. I don't want anybody to feel like they're caught off guard in reading something that, they avoid actively. And so I think it's kind of my responsibility as an author to make sure that there's a list somewhere that they can see, okay, this is what I'm getting into. But I don't put detailed content warnings in my book. What I do in the beginning of the book is I give a kind of vague content warning. This is an adult book. There are situations that aren't suitable for all readers. And then I link to my website. You can get a detailed trigger warning here if you want one. I prefer for you to go in blind, but I understand
Yeah.
that's not always the case for everybody. So I don't think it's a hardship to do. And I don't think if you want people to go in blind, you don't want to spoil things for people who may like that. It's so easy to link to a website and let them get there on their own. And I think it's just kind of a respect thing between the author and the reader to allow space for people to make their own decisions on whether they want to go in blind or whether they want to know what they're getting into.
Yeah, and I think that's very reasonable. That's awesome. I do have, so obviously earlier we were talking about that you also used to be a songwriter. So,
Yeah.
do you still write on the side songs? And have you ever put one in a book?
I have not ever put a song in a book. No, I've never put a song in a book. I had to think about whether I'd use lines from one, but I don't think I have. I don't write songs as much anymore. One, because my daughter doesn't let me play the piano. So it's sitting over here. I just moved into this new house. It's not even out of its case yet, my keyboard. But uh, it was really always a creative outlet for me. I write really angsty music and I try to write really emotional characters. And so I feel like having the outlet in novels kind of satisfies that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when the urge hits, I sit down at a piano and something may come to me, but it's never been an active thing when I'm writing anything. It has to come to me and then it kind of writes. And I haven't thought about how long it's been since I've written a song till you just asked me, but it has been a long time.
I think though this is not an uncommon sort of story though. I think as artists there are authors who have multiple hobbies, but then when the writing kind of takes over, often
Mhm.
the other hobby sort of just quietens down for a couple of years so then they can focus on this because it's kind of obsessive almost. You
Yeah,
just want to be writing all the time because it's fun for you as the author as well to discover all these new worlds and characters.
right, exactly.
Goodness. So I expect to see you on a live on Facebook in a couple of days, playing the piano with your new something. No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure.
Do you have a Facebook group?
Oh yeah, yeah. The Mac and Colts
Oh, I
on
love that.
Facebook. Yep.
Amazing. So I would love to know, now thinking big, what is the goal? What is the dream that you are chasing for your books and career?
My goal with writing was always just I write because the stories in my head want to be written. So I think I don't want to say I have a specific goal of like topping charts or anything like that because for me it's such a personal thing. It is my career, it is business, but writing fundamentally is just a really vulnerable thing that I'm called to do. So my success and my goal is that I continue to enjoy writing and that I put out things that other people can connect to and can also enjoy. And if that ends up with me, becoming popular enough to hit lists, I'd love to hit like New York Times, USA Today. But again, that's not really a focus. My focus is just creating stories that demand to be told and hoping that it connects to readers and allows them to get lost in the world for a little
Yeah,
bit.
I love that. And hey, if we get a Netflix deal or something amongst that, that'll be awesome.
If we get major motion pictures, I won't say no.
I love that. Do you have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author? So you and I are going to go on a very romantic date. I lit a candle. Unfortunately, I did not bring the champagne, but next time. Um, so basically, what it is 5 rapid questions. Are you ready?
Here I go.
All right. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
Oh my, see, but that's a hard one. I'm always clumsy. I don't know. I can't even answer it quickly because I'm literally always clumsy. I'm always falling. So
Have you
I
ever broken
can't.
any bones or anything like that? Or
Yeah, when I was a kid, I tried to ride my bike over a pothole and I fell in and it okay, there we go. I fell in and then I broke my leg and then I went camping like a couple months later once I was out of the cast and in a boot, got stuck in like flycatcher's mud with like wet sand that's kind of like quicksand, sunk me down. My friend had to pull me out with a stick and it sucked my boot off of my foot that was still healing and I ended up having to walk back to the campsite and I refractured my freaking foot. So there we go. That might be my clumsiest moment.
you really are a clumsy person, aren't you?
I know. I know.
What are the 3 words that would best describe you?
I would say happy
Yeah.
and talkative, rambler.
And
An
what
introvert would be the real third one. I'm an introvert.
really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
We'll add like clumsy as a fourth. I feel like that needs
Yeah. That's the
flavor.
asterisk.
What is the song that best describes you?
See, that depends on my mood. I love Your Song by Elton John. I'm going to say that describes me, but only because I've been playing it for my daughter since she was in the womb every single day. She loves it and she listens to it every day, and it's just become part of my personality at this point.
Do you listen to music while you're writing, or do you need complete silence?
I listen to music, but normally it can't be with words. So I listen to a lot of lo-fi beats. The only caveat to that is if there's a scene that's in my head that a song really goes along with, then I will listen to that song on repeat while I write that scene. And then that song always ends up in the playlist for that I put in the front of my books.
Cool. What is your life motto?
I like if you can't get out of it, get into it.
Oh, I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, because my grandma used to say it to me all the time.
Did you mean that when you got your moon boots stuck in the quicksand?
Yeah, she was actually there on that trip.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
I was a trapeze artist for a long time. When I was in middle school and high school, actually, I did trapeze.
Who are you?
I don't know. I don't know.
Was that if it wasn't going to be a songwriter or an author, I fear you were going to run away with the circus, and I feel like that was such a
Yeah.
clear option. My goodness. I have had so much fun today. What is coming out? What do we need to be on the lookout for? And where do we find you?
Okay, well, what's coming out is the next book in the Never After series, Twisted, which is an Aladdin reimagining, but of course, where the villain gets the happily ever after. It comes out February 7th, 2023, but the pre-order is up on all major platforms. And the cover reveal for that is this is, well, maybe it will be done by the time you post this, I don't know. But the cover reveal August 28th with BuzzFeed Books. And I am very, very excited for this book to come out. You can find me on pretty much every platform: Facebook at author Emily McIntire, Instagram, it's Emily McIntire, Pinterest. I think it's Emily McIntire on there. I'm on Twitter, and then of course TikTok, author Emily McIntire.
Amazing. Well, I think I'm following you on everything but Pinterest, but I'm going to amend that after this interview. Um,
Okay.
but I have had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe watch this space. We might get you on next year again.
Yeah, anytime. Maybe my dog will come too.
I hope so. In a year's time, probably be in the exact same spot.
Yeah, probably.
Love it. Well, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, guys.